So I actually had allocated this story for yesterday because I wanted to spend 10 minutes on it talking about it. But recently, Trump, and Michigan is a state that I'm residing in. And so I feel some type of way about Governor Gretchen Whitmer because I think that she is trash and I am not a fan of her. And I hate the fact that they try to make her hip and try to invite her to the barbecue and they put a bunch of buffs on her and buff glasses. Did y'all ever see that when they had gave her some Cartier glasses? Let me see if I can pull that up. Let me see if I can get that popping. Y'all never seen that before? They gave her a nickname and they called her Big Gretch. Big Gretch. Y'all never seen that before? And she came in with her Cardis and y'all never said nothing about her misappropriating the culture. I wonder why. Oh, because she's a liberal and because she was friends with Kamala Harris. Yeah, she came in like this because they gave her some Cardis and they said, yo, you Big Gretch. I love the fact that you wearing Cardis out here. You now Big Gretch. And nobody said anything. Everybody was just cool with it. And nobody had anything to say as a result of her. But I will tell you, personally, I think that she is trash. Absolute trash. 100%. Anyways, she made her way over to the White House to beg Trump and to negotiate with Trump. And I'm okay with that. That's one of the first things that I actually agree with her on. Is that we have to put away our disagreement so we can work on the behalf of the people. So we can work very, very hard on behalf of the people. And so she pulled up to the White House, our Michigan governor, and Trump highlighted her and he said, yep, and the Michigan governor came through and she's here to, have a conversation with us and make sure that she's trying to save the Great Lakes and working on behalf of the great fish in the Michigan area. And this is what happened.
Welcome back to America Decides. Thanks for hanging out with us. It is rare, I think you'd acknowledge, for President Trump to praise a Democrat, especially in public. But during an Oval Office visit yesterday, he called Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer a, quote, very good person who has done a, quote, excellent job. Earlier in the day, though, the governor, that is State Governor Whitmer, wasn't so generous about the president's approach to tariffs.
I'm not against tariffs outright, but it is a blunt tool. You can't just pull out the tariff hammer to swing at every problem without a clear, defined end goal.
I want to bring in our political panel. Ophira Yeheskel is Director of External Affairs for the Democratic Governors Association. I'm glad to have you here. Kevin Sheridan, back again, but probably only after he heard about the tariff pause. Former spokesman for the Republican National Committee and once a senior advisor for the long-departed Romney-Ryan 2012 presidential campaign. Kevin, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Picking up on the pause.
Yeah.
How much do you think that factored into Republican calculations, specifically in the House, to get the budget resolution passed and know that they're going to have this breathing room where there's no tariff uncertainty while they deal with the hard realities of trying to write that bill?
Yeah, I don't know that the pause necessarily was the catalyst for it, passing the
Didn't
House
hurt, though.
today, but it doesn't hurt. It gives everybody a little bit of breathing room. It gives the stock market a little bit more confidence, although it went down again today a little bit.
Didn't look very confident today, especially when the Dow was down 2,100.
Yeah. So, look, Republicans are going to have to get this passed. I think this, as soon as possible. Their entire legislative agenda and his
but you know as well as I
agenda
do,
weighs on it.
They don't want to have to answer two hard questions at the same time, because there are going to be hard questions about the reconciliation bill, and they didn't want to deal with hard questions about tariffs and the volatility it was causing. They're going to be spared that for 90 days. That's got to be a relief to them.
So essentially, Gretchen Whitmer went over to the White House and she flew over to D.C. in order to do some business with Trump, and then she started to become public enemy number one from the Democrat Party. Now, I got a couple thoughts about this, but this is what wound up happening as a result of it.
Now, let's talk about more serious stuff. The president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, is in the U.S. El Salvador is housing in its mega prisons a number of gangbangers in the U.S. illegally. Tell me about the relationship he has with the Trump administration.
Well, the president of El Salvador is similar to Donald Trump in that he's no nonsense and he wants to get rid of all the gangbangers, not only in his country, but here in America, he wants to kind of be like a private prison, third-party system where we can put a lot of these Trinidad Rugas or MS-13 gangbangers. We can just send them down to El Salvador and we can pay them to house them. So, I love the idea of outsourcing our prisons to El Salvador. So this meeting, it could spell trouble for the cartels and the organized crime that is, causing a lot of problems here in America.
I got to tell you, this guy is one of the most popular leaders anywhere in the world. He was re-elected with such an enormous margin, and he has turned El Salvador from one of the most crime-riddled hellholes anywhere in the world to a safe country, and he's done it in with such speed. It really is a remarkable feat, but the media hates him too, so he never gets any credit for any of that. Also in the White House in recent days, Alex, has been the governor of Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer. She's got ambitions of being the 2028 Democrat presidential candidate. But tell me about this performance here, Alex, trying to hide her face during a meeting with President Donald Trump in the Oval Office. I mean, it just looks juvenile.
Look how silly
Governor
she looks.
Whitmer is.
Look how silly she looks, trying to hide her face, even though she's at the Oval Office. If I'm her, or if I'm a part of her team, or if I'm part of any of the people that's surrounding this woman, I'm saying, hey, embrace it. Show that you're willing to work with other people, or you're willing to work with other retailers. And that way you're actually doing a thing that's on the behalf or on the best, for the best interest of the Michigan people. That, yeah, my allegiance is to the people that's in my state. And I need to do whatever it takes in order to make sure that my people are taken care of. I'm going to be the best governor possible because I was elected by the people in Michigan to take care of people in Michigan. That's what I'm going to do. Why would you do that? Why would you do this like the camera is going to go away and it's not going to take a picture of you and then you're going to be looking even more stupid than before? This is how dumb our governor is, y'all. I just want y'all to see this. This is what we deal with inside of Michigan. And I know each and every individual state got its own problems, but this is some of the nonsense that we deal with. Real talk. This is the dumbest thing that I've ever seen in my entire life. Look at her inside of the Oval Office. Why would she be doing this? And of course, now she's getting it from both sides because the liberals is going off on her and they saying, why would she even be in there inside of the Oval Office in the first place? And obviously, she probably wants to become the presidential candidate of the United States of America. That's her next step, is to advocate for becoming the president of the United States of America. That's one of the reasons why she cozied up next to Biden. She cozied up next to Kamala Harris because she wanted to be next in line. And then the Republicans is looking at her like, you're so dumb. Why you got that covering up your face and we already got you on camera inside of the Oval Office?
Is the biggest embarrassment when it comes to not just only her state, but when Michigan was locked down, her husband got caught taking their boat down to the boat dock when everybody else was shut down. Yep. When it comes to Whitmer, she did that weird, publicity stunt where she fed the girl the milk and the Doritos chips. So she's not one to shy away from having her face in front of a camera. So for her to do this is just another political stunt, an embarrassment. And it shows you a politician that doesn't want to try to reach across the aisle to try to get things done for her constituents. Instead, she hides her face because she's ashamed and she's a coward of who she really is.
Well, I remember back in the height of the COVID era, Governor Whitmer, whilst Florida was completely open and free, Texas, where you are, was open and free, she was locking down seeds. She didn't want anyone to be planting seeds in their garden to grow vegetables, like just some...
It was so bad. It was so bad in Michigan. That is when I actually moved to Florida because I wanted to make sure that we had the freedom to move around. It was a lot of people in Michigan and a lot of business owners that actually suffered under the advice and under the lockdowns of Gretchen Whitmer. I remember it was a guy that actually opened up his barbershop. Yeah, we just gonna keep on rocking. I know that it was a little bit delayed and all of that stuff, but we good. I remember that it was a guy that had barbershops. It was like 80 and 90-year-old and 70-year-old people that had businesses. It was one guy that had a barbershop that, he was getting arrested, and they actually had bolted up the doors to prevent him from being able to open up his barbershop to continue to make money, and he needed money to survive. And nobody gave him any recourse. Nobody gave him anything as a result of it. And so they locked this entire state down. I wound up flying over to Florida, and I wound up staying there for like 3 or 4 months. And Florida, it wasn't completely open in that you didn't have to wear a mask in some places, but business was booming as usual. The economy was still humming. People were still rocking. I heard that Texas was still open. Was Texas still open during a lot of the pandemic at the time that I was in Florida? Yeah, so I made the adjustment and I got the heck up out of there. So shout out to Gretchen Whitmer for continuing to embarrass herself. Thank God that we have term limits here in Michigan. And I don't think she would have got voted in again anyway. But thank God that we got term limits in here in Michigan. And we actually getting up out of here. Make sure y'all hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications.